So when looking through the tunnel on the left, I saw my guide, which I've come to know as my guide, a sumo wrestler. You know, who would expect to see a sumo wrestler? You know,
So, hi, Soul family, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Haji, and this is Amazing NDE Stories. Our guest today is Janet Tarantino. Janet, welcome to the show.
thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so Janet has a few amazing NDE stories. So, Janet, just jump right in and tell us about your amazing experience.
Okay, so my first ND was at the age of 15 when I was very ill. The ceiling of my room turned into a sky of clouds when I fell out of my body. My spirit fell out of my body at that time. Instantly, two tunnels formed, one on the left side of the room and one on the right side of the room within the clouds above me, and they opened to two other dimensions. I peered through each of the tunnels. First one I looked through was this, had the sumo wrestler. But incredibly, even though I was borderline blind without my glasses, I could see perfectly while I was out of my body. Actually, even more than perfect when I was out of my body, because even things in the distance, I could see clearly even though I had not moved. So maybe it's because we can be in all places at all times once we're out of our body that kind of thing happens. So when looking through the tunnel on the left, I saw my guide, which I've come to know as my guide, a sumo wrestler. You know, who would expect to see a sumo wrestler? You know, to the religious community, he would be an angelic watcher angel. An angelic watcher angel is a type of angel that observes, guides, and protects us. In the spiritual community, the sumo wrestler would be known as a master guide or ascended master, or by many other names as well. In the other tunnel to the right was another world with a different background. The background in that uh, world was black. It was like the universe, the blackness of the universe. And I heard the most beautiful music coming from it. And that's why my attention was drawn there. Then I saw a beautiful, gorgeous young woman dressed in a white dress with layers of white lace, with long, dark, almost black hair, come riding in on the sound of the most beautiful angelic singing that one can imagine. It was glorious. I called her the music box lady because at 15, that's the only thing I could associate it with it in my life, because we didn't have that kind of thing in those days, other than, I mean, this was quite some time ago. And I also thought of her as Daddy's little girl. When she moved up in a way, I thought that Daddy was putting her up on a pedestal. When I was 15, there wasn't internet, TV, and that was limited. And we didn't have the creativity that is available with one's imaginations as we do today on the internet and through all these social media sites. The music box lady and the sumo wrestler, they were having a conversation, but I was not included in that conversation because the music box lady was in her tunnel conversing with the sumo wrestler in his tunnel, and they were facing each other. But the sumo wrestler always watched me. He never turned his eyes off me, even though he was talking to the beautiful lady. And while they conversed, I was during that time frame, I was really interested in fashion. I had earned money during the summer doing corn detasseling so I could buy some clothes, additional clothes for my high school days, because I was transitioning from middle school to high school. And I was looking forward to getting involved in all the school activities. So I wanted to see her dress. And just by that desire to see her dress, I was up at it. I was looking through those eyelets of the lace like they were huge caverns. And then I flew in and out of those eyelets while I went around the dress looking and inspecting it. And I felt like a skier riding down a hillside with my hair trailing behind me, headed for the finish line. It was really fun. And then I ended up going back to where I was above my body. And then when the sumo wrestler and the music box lady were done with their conversation, they turned into orbs of light and flew out of the house behind me. My bedroom was in a corner room, so I had a window behind the headboard and on the side wall. My mom was in bed with me because I was so sick. She was trying to take care of me. But they flew out the wall as if there was nothing there. And I could see them go around the house, even though, like I had X-ray vision, I guess you could say. And they bobbed up and down the side window, watching me for a while until one went away for a while, probably left the sumo wrestler to watch me. And then the light orb came back, and then they both left. And then I had to settle down into my body again because they never came back, and I didn't want them to go. I felt like I knew them, that they were friends of mine, and I didn't want them to go. But I ended up going back into my body, and then I still remained sick, and eventually Mom took me to the doctor, and I recovered. My second NDE happened when I was in my mid-30s, I think. These things were so far apart in my life. I didn't connect them. 15 and then 30, and the next one was in I believe my late 40s. So they were so far apart. And this was a horrific car crash. I was on my way home from purchasing flowers. I was stopped behind another vehicle who had come to a stop in the middle of the road at the bottom of the hill where there was no reason to stop. But there was a park nearby, and I thought maybe a child was maybe sneaking across the road. And I didn't want to go on either side of that car because I didn't know what direction that child might have been going. So I stopped behind him. There was no cars around us at the time, so it was no big deal. But then all of the traffic started coming over the hill, the top of the hill that was behind me, and it started barreling down. And I looked in my rearview mirror, and I knew the pickup truck. I could see the driver of the pickup, like his face was right in front of me. I could see that he was looking to the side, like he was looking to change lanes or looking at somebody he was visiting with that I couldn't see. And I knew he didn't see that we were stopped. So I knew he was going to hit me. And at that moment, when I knew he was going to hit me, I had the thought, I didn't buckle my seatbelt. I knew I didn't have time. And so I screamed out in my mind, God, oh God, he's going to hit me. And instantly, even though I was alone in the car, I heard a voice give me instructions to lie down across the seat and cover my face. So I did as I was told because I didn't have time to think of anything else. And I didn't want my face smashed against the steering wheel. So anyway, since I didn't have my seatbelt on, instead my body was thrown around the car, but instead of being mangled and thrown through the front window, I crashed between the cars. I was saved by an angelic being that I could feel, but I could not see. I say I couldn't see him because I couldn't see him, but I could feel his arms, his massive arms. And I have no doubt that my body was manipulated by many other angels to keep my body safe that day from being tossed around in that car. And I know I was tossed around in the car because the window I saw shattering above me was the rear window, and the front window was still intact. In my book, I feature the mangled car and the drawings of the accident scene from my point of view. And I also include the other drawings of the other near-death experiences too. Anyway, what I know for sure is that there was those huge arms, possibly the sumo wrestler, I don't know, could have been the divine himself, or could be just an angel. I say just, but I mean angels who picked me up out of my body and took me up to another dimension. The angels stayed with me. I knew they were there because I could feel their touch while I was looking down on the accident scene. And I was peering down through a hole in the clouds, even though it was a blue cloudless day. It was a gorgeous day. So those clouds seemingly is the veil that we can't normally see, and that separates one dimension from another. Yeah. And after the mangled mess of vehicles settled, I was snapped back into my body that still laid in the car. I left the hospital that day with minor abrasions and muscle trauma, but nothing broken. My car was total. It was not fixable. And incredibly, again, while out of my body, I could see perfectly without my glasses, because my glasses were thrown from my face when I was in the car collision. They actually, from the force of my body being propelled from the force of the truck hitting me, my body knocked down the seat backs of the car. And that's why I found myself in the back seat. And my glasses were still in the front seat. It was like the force of my body going back left my glasses, and they just fell to the floor. And the third NDE happened when I was in my late 40s, like I said. It was caused by an allergy that I didn't know I had. And one night I suffocated during the night because my allergies were worse that night. I usually had, was only this season. This was the first season I had had this allergy, and I thought it would go away as the seasons changed, but it didn't. And so during the day, when I went into the house, I thought I was congested from working with the horses or the animals or grass or mowing, whatever I happened to be doing at that time. So I would take allergy pills to get to clear up my sinuses. But this particular night, it wouldn't have it. And I felt my tightening in my chest, and all of a sudden I popped out of my body and found myself floating in a velvety blackness of unconditional love, peace, and tranquility. And I knew everything was as it should be. I felt immense freedom, as if I'd been the contents of a balloon. That's how I can say, you've been the contents of a balloon that has been pumped so high, it was so taut, and then all of a sudden it pops and releases the contents into the air. That's what I felt like. I was finally free. And while I was floating there, I was actually floating kind of face up toward heaven. I kind of felt like, I guess you could say, a spa day. You felt like you were in the most perfect atmosphere of water, and you were floating there, but there was no water. I guess maybe that's why they say when they relate you to God, you're floating in water, because he's everywhere, and he was everywhere. And so I was floating in that atmosphere, and I saw a silver cord float by in front of me, and it went very slow in an atmosphere with no gravity, and it went from left to right, just very gently floating above me. I didn't know what that was at the time, but many years later, somebody mentioned that it was in the Bible, and that's the tether that the Bible talks about. And to the spiritual community, it's the tether that they speak about that connects our body to heaven. So then in spirit, I watched it was a shimmering blue energy. My body was a shimmering blue energy. And I watched it leave the lower half of my body, and I could watch it because I was my spirit consciousness that had already left the upper part of my body, and I was now watching my spirit leave the lower part of my body. I had stretched to escape the physical form. Maybe that's why it was a near-death experience. I don't know, but that's how I exited my body. And it was very slow. I could watch it. At one point, I zoomed down to my waistline and could watch my spirit leave the lower half of my body as it bubbled up and out. And all the while, my spirit consciousness retained my memories of who I was and my loved ones and the life I had lived. So our consciousness is retained in our spirit. Immediately upon exiting my body, I was connected to God's consciousness. I knew my blue spirit body was my sliver, my little portion of God's spirit. that it's referred to in the Bible as the Holy Spirit. The spiritual community simply refers to it as spirit. And that's why he says he lives life with us, because he really does. His spirit is actually inside of us, and it's through his Holy Spirit that Jesus and God or the super consciousness, whoever you want to refer to it as, lives life and experiences life with us, because it really is in our body, and that's what our consciousness is. We are actually each a spark of the divine in every way. And I was healed of ailments that I had. Any ailments I had at the time were gone when I was out of my body. And I was perfect again. I noticed a pin of light coming towards the room off from the right. And as it was approaching from where I laid in bed, my body was in bed, it was coming from the right. And it was zooming toward the room. And I also noticed a second light approaching off to the left of the body. That's when I transformed from the blue spirit energy, I transformed and I morphed into an orb of light. And I found myself resting in a wand made of what I can only explain as love. It was a wand of cushy love. And it was holding me. And the wand was similar to what a child blows bubbles from, but it was very soft. And as I said, cushy. I can definitely say everything in heaven is made of love, that's for sure. I can explain the way I morphed, because when I was out of my body and I was basking in this spa, I felt my energetic arms floating out to my sides, and they were extended because they were no longer encapsulated in a body. But as I was started to morph into the orb shape, I could feel my spirit body coming out of my lower body and drawing up toward me, and my spirit arms started coming in, and then I kind of folded them in, and then I morphed into the shape of an orb. And as I morphed, my vision had a fishbowl effect until it was actually completed with the morphing. And suddenly the pin of light that had been approaching from the right flew into the room, and it stopped in front of me. And it grew into the most gorgeous light being that radiated light and had light rays coming out of its heart center. It was beautiful. From the moment I saw the figure, I thought of Jesus. But then I also thought of myself, and I thought, why would he be coming for me? I'm a nobody. So I discounted him as being Jesus. But he wanted me to know, and through a later experience, and I indeed did find out that it was Jesus that was there to greet me, and he loved me. He loved me unconditionally, just like he does every one of us. No matter what we do wrong, no matter what we do right, he loves us just for being and existing in life. Even though we think, why would he be coming for us? So next, God is the other pin of light that's coming through the darkness, either coming through the darkness or we're going to him. I'm not really sure, but it was growing in size. It's my belief that Jesus and I were in a tunnel, that the darkness was in the tunnel. And whether God was zooming toward us, or we were zooming toward him, or whether he was drawing us in, I think it was more like he was drawing us toward him, because I could see Jesus's hair gently blowing across his chin toward the light that was next to him, which shows movement, even though I could not feel the movement. And I kept drifting closer and closer to the light of that tunnel. So I believe that was either God in his energetic glory, or it was God in his energetic glory, whether he was there with us or whether he was in heaven and the light was coming out of the entrance to heaven. I don't know, but I was at the precipice of entering heaven. And then he held out his rainbow arms and held me. and he showed me moments of my life and told me to understand these moments, they matter. And they were played as mini movie moments of different portions of my life. Some of them I remember because they had already happened, but some were I didn't recognize because they had not happened, and they did not happen till sometime far out into the future. And actually, I would say a majority of them were shown that happened after this event. And now they've all happened. But because I still wanted to go to heaven, to my real home in heaven, then the angels came for me because they were trying to convince me to stay. And by showing me these things. And I didn't want to stay here. So the angels came to convince me and to stay in this world. And that's when I transformed from the orb shape into a white translucent form of a person, of me, which tells me that our spirit can change forms as it needs or desires. They touched my elbows, back of my elbows, above the back of my arms, above the elbows, and lifted me high into the sky and showed me a vision of my husband calling for emergency help. And I observed emergency equipment rushing to my aid. But even though this was being shown to me in a vision, I was living it as well. It was as if the angels had taken me into the future. They jumped me into the future and let me experience what would happen if I chose to go to heaven. This is when I had the veridical, they call a veridical experience, where I could be in all places at all times. But I didn't care about my body. I was detached from it and I didn't care. I wanted to go back to heaven. Because I still wanted to go, instantly I found myself back on the precipice of entering heaven and God's light when I was shown one more image. I guess it was their last ditch effort to show me or convince me to stay. And that image was of my middle child, Kurt. Now, just by looking at his image, I knew something was going to happen to him in the future. And if I didn't stay to help him through it, his life might have gone down a path that would not have been so good for him. Again, this shows that we know there's pre-planning, because obviously I was supposed to be there to help him through that moment. And if I didn't stay, that support would not be there. So that's when I told Jesus I wasn't ready to go yet. And I turned back into the blue spirit body, and I sat back down in Jan's body. I put my blue butt in her butt, and a spirit foot into each of her physical feet. And then I placed my spirit hands on my spirit knees, and I rocked back and forth in the body until I could get up the momentum to lay back down, snap in, and help her sit up and gasp for air. All the while I re-entered my body, a message from heaven kept echoing over and over again. And the message is not only for me, it's for everybody. And the echoing message was, love is the only thing that matters. Love is the only thing that matters. And it kept echoing over and over until I was completely in my body, and it echoes in me every day, thousands of times a day. I think about every word, every action I make, and I think, is this the way I want to share my love? So I consider it often. So once I could help Jan sit up and gasp for air, then she had to live her life, wondering when the other shoe was going to drop for her son, Kurt. These are the 3 near-death experiences that, and there's, like I said, approximately 10 more that are not covered here that have shaped my life and my worldview. And they have taught me that we never die, but we're spiritual beings working in tandem with the physical body. And we as a spirit are learning to evolve, and the body cannot function without the energy of the spirit. And that's why when the body fails, the spirit withdraws and goes back to heaven, to who gave it. The brain may operate the body functions, but the spirit, as I said before, is held in our consciousness, and that's the memories of who we are. Right? And this goes from lifetime to lifetime. Now think about this. While I was out of my body, I still had my thoughts. I still knew who I was. I'm considering this, it's my spirit that's talking to your spirit. The body is just clothing. So we're always talking spirit to spirit communication, even though it's coming out of the mouth of this person. It's actually the spirit that's communicating our thoughts and our experiences. There is two factions involved here. You have the spirit and you have the personality, the ego that edges God out. You have to balance the two. And when you get this the inner thoughts of how your guidance is, always choose the good one. And oftentimes the good one is stopping you from doing something you really want to do because it's not the best thing for you. And that's why the ego sometimes overcomes the spirit, and you do something you wish you hadn't. You might think, oh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. But it's only by experiencing life here on earth and discovering the assistance heaven has laid out for us to find and help us create the great mystical adventure that we're actually having. And we must always remember that we have that spark of the divine inside of us, and it's up to us to drop our self-imposed limitations and achieve our imaginings and our happiness. And because God doesn't have the same limitations for us, he knows we can do more, and we must take the steps to get there. So in closing, I'd like to assure everyone that God loves us unconditionally and wants us to always live with love. You just have no idea how much he does love us. And we're to lift ourselves and others to be the best that we and they can be. After all, the message that was sent back is love is the only thing that matters. So I hope this helps somebody out there. Well, I would like to start by saying that I didn't know that I had so many close calls with heaven. I'm sure many of us don't. And of course, I knew something unusual happened, but I couldn't associate it with anything in the ordinary world. So I decided to, put it aside and get back to normal life. I think that many of the listeners can relate to this for sure. It wasn't until after the third near-death experience where I was shown moments of my life and was told to understand them because they matter, that I set out on a path of discovery. The path of discovery took many years, and it was much later in life that all the moments have happened that I started to understand the deeper meaning of all the moments. It was only after I had a vision that was sent from God, heaven, that was showing me writing a book and talking about it, that I knew that I had to sit down and write a book, even though I didn't think I could, which he was showing us that we can do more than we think we can. We set up our own limitations, and we shouldn't do that. So now my book, Dying to See Revelations About God, Jesus, Our Pathways, and the Nature of the Soul, has been published, and I've set out on a path to share my story, which thankfully Haji invited me to be a part of it. So while writing the manuscript, I went through each of the approximate 13 events. You'll only hear about 3 today that I was shown. And when I understood that each moment meant I would have an aha second, you know how that Oprah's aha second was, then Jesus would appear, and he would be in the room before me, or sometimes he'd be in a vision and I'd see him halfway up and he'd give me a nod, or sometimes he'd be acknowledge me with a yes, and then, or sometimes he'd have his hand on my shoulder. I could feel him. I'm one of those near-death experiencers that obviously continues to have contact with heaven. So that's one of the after effects. Not everybody has that, but I do. My story crosses boundaries between religious beliefs and spiritual beliefs. So don't get stuck on, my terminology, because it affects both. And it reveals that we have pre-birth planning, which occurs. And this means before we're born, of course, we choose certain lessons, challenges, and goals and experiences that we want to learn in this lifetime. I openly indicate that we have some input about this planning, because even though I don't specifically remember being a part of the planning process, I know I must have been, because of this description in my first near-death experience of the music box lady when I was 15 years old. We don't plan every detail of our lives. We just only plan specific moments, because we're open to adventure throughout the rest of our life, just like a vacation, depending on the route you take, is the things you experience and learn from. So it depends on the choices we make and the paths we take along the way, and our viewpoint that determines how our life will unfold. When I say this by viewpoint, it depends on the glasses that we're looking from, positivity or negativity. We can always turn something into a positive experience if we look through the glasses that there's something better to be coming along, or we can look through the glasses of negativity, which creates a very difficult life. So I hope everybody chooses positivity. We also have soul agreements with other spirits to play a significant role in our life and who help and teach us something along the way. And we do naturally likewise with them. For instance, if you have a person that just clicks with you in life, that you felt like you've known them forever, they were probably scheduled to be in your life for a reason. And I'm sure everyone can think of somebody in their life that they felt like they've known a long time. And I found out much of the planning of our life is done by a council of high spiritual beings, or council of elders, however that you want to refer to them as. It is them who set up how the themes and scenarios and everything will play out. And it's up to us to grasp the learning through experience when we go through these processes. But I mentioned not everything is planned. We have free will. And I have no doubt there are many instances along the life path that I've overlooked, and many of you have overlooked opportunities too, because they're just, we don't pick up and grasp those moments. But we'll find out someday when we look at our Akashic records in heaven when we go there. The specific moments God showed me are he showed me 13, but in the third near-death experience were meant to happen no matter what life path I took. So however, no matter what, they might manifest differently on one path versus another. That's why God says he will guide us along the best pathway. He doesn't say there's only one pathway. We're not allowed to remember our pre-birth planning because we have to experience it through a fresh perspective and a sense of discovery, so we can learn and grow. However, we can become aware of the planning of our life through deja vu moments. I'm sure a lot of you have had deja vu moments where you felt like you've been there or done this before. Those are moments in your life plan that have been scheduled to happen. Also, you can learn more about them through dream visions and meditation. Meditation is a great one, or viewing your life in a rearview mirror and looking back on what experiences seem to keep happening again. If they don't keep resolving, if they don't resolve and they keep happening, then we haven't learned what we're supposed to learn by those experiences and change our way, because it's important that we implement the learning for that negative experience to go away and move on in life. So, and all this is registered in the Book of Life or Akashic Records, Cosmic Mind, or Universal Library, whatever you want to say that is. And that also has our potential possibilities and faults that we need to overcome. When I was pre-kindergarten age, this is the start of my first near-death experience. Well, not quite, it was before it. I didn't realize that I saw pages of my Book of Life. I told my mom I was going to die young, and I was pre-kindergarten age, and I didn't know what age meant because I was only 4 or 5 years old, that area. And so I remember thinking, and as I looked up thinking, I had me at the ages of three different ages whipped past me in my mind. And those ended up being the ages of my 3 near-death experiences. So my 3 near-death experiences were planned events for me to learn. And I've learned a tremendous amount of information from them. And I wasn't until after I set out on my God-given task to understand, because I got that vision of me writing a book and talking about it, that everything fell into place and I had to write. And it showed me during my third NDE that everything is connected and all the puzzle pieces of my life started falling into place. And all this stuff relates to everybody. You can relate things that happened to me to your life as well.